Everyone, and oh, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our nonprofit town hall with Senator Gillibrand. My name is Chai Jinasurat. My pronouns are he, him, and I am the Vice President of Policy at Nonprofit New York. As mentioned in our registration, we will begin right away. Please note that captioning and ASL are available. And if you would like to view the ASL, we recommend you pin our ASL interpreter on your screen. We are recording today's webinar, Town Hall, and we'll share the recording with all registrants. It is now my pleasure to introduce Jessica Mendieta from the National Council of Nonprofits.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining this very important call with Senator Gillibrand. As Chai mentioned, my name is Jessica Mendieta, and I am the Policy Associate at the National Council of Nonprofits. And today I'm also joining as a constituent, given that I'm based in Queens, New York. So a little bit more about the National Council of Nonprofits. We are the largest network of nonprofits in North America, and we focus on the 97% of nonprofit organizations with a budget under 5 million, which I think it's a lot of folks on the call today. So we're very happy to be working with the New York Council of Nonprofits, Nonprofit New York, and other partners on this call to champion, inform, and connect organizations around the country and advance the issues that impact nonprofits the most. Once again, it's an honor to be here, and I'll turn it over to Jan.
Thank you. I first want to thank Senator Gillibrand for being here today and for your ongoing support of the nonprofit sector. As said, my name is Jan Fisher, and I am the Executive Director of Nonprofit Westchester, Westchester's only membership organization solely dedicated to advancing the needs and interests of the county's nonprofit organizations, the people we serve, and the nonprofit workforce. I am proud to be here with partners Nonprofit New York, NICON, and the National Council of Nonprofits to help focus on the nonprofit workforce, a group that has been disproportionately impacted by the intersecting storm of COVID-19 and systemic racism and sexism. And on to the next speaker.
Thank you so much, Jan. It is now my pleasure to introduce Kelly Matthews from the New York Council of Nonprofits.
Hi, thank you, Chai, and everyone. Thanks to the Senator for joining us today. My name is Kelly Matthews. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am the interim chief executive officer of the New York Council of Nonprofits. And we are a statewide association of charitable organizations, 3,000 strong. We provide capacity building, technical assistance and training, strengthening our nonprofit members so that they can do the good work they do for their communities. So thrilled to be a part of this. Thank you, Chai and Nonprofit New York for doing all the heavy lift on this. So welcome, everyone.
Thank you so much, Kelly. And it is now my pleasure to introduce Meg Barnett from Nonprofit New York, who will introduce Senator Gillibrand.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to be really quick because I know that we want to hear from the Senator. So I just want to say thanks again to our partners who are here. Again, I'm Meg Barnett. I'm the president and CEO of Nonprofit New York. We are really thankful to work with such great partners to support nonprofits and the communities that they serve in New York. We believe that when one nonprofit is stronger, we are all stronger. And we really value the partnership in advocacy on behalf of the sector, the folks we serve, and the folks we employ. Want to say a special thanks to all of you who've joined us today. The Senator, we're really, really thrilled to be here in community with Senator Gillibrand. She has been a champion for childcare and families and low-income communities and working families across New York State, and also has supported so many of the missions that are represented by the organizations here. So we are thrilled to have her, to be able to have a chance to talk with her. We are focused on nonprofit workforce issues, and I'm gonna, before asking the Senator to handing things over and asking the Senator to speak, I'd love to share a video message that we are going to be sharing with all of you, and we would love your help in amplifying it. And again, thank you so much to the Senator for being here with us today and for being a nonprofit champion and understanding that nonprofits make New York.
If we're not valued now, then when? The nonprofit workforce has the ability to mobilize and meet people's needs at a moment's notice. We help people in some of their most challenging times and so much more. But we are the most taken for granted sector in the state. 64% of us are women and 56% of us are people of color. We are of the communities we serve. But why are we undervalued and not keeping up with salaries from even our public sector counterparts? There is no recovery without us. Nonprofits make New York.
So again, thank you so much, Senator, for being here. We appreciate your support on so many of our mission issues and for the nonprofit sector. We strongly believe that there's no recovery without nonprofits, and we are eager to get to work. So thanks for being here.
My pleasure. And thank you, Chai, for the introduction. And thank you to the Nonprofit New York for all the organizing and work you've been doing. Thank you for all the extraordinary ways you lift up families across our state. I'm really looking forward to hearing from you and talking about how I can help you accomplish your goals and get your work done and support you. Over the last 2 years, as you well know, so many families lost their income, their health, and their loved ones. Countless families were touched with severe loss, and many people have also been touched with severe economic insecurity. That's led to increased hunger, domestic violence, and substance abuse, and a great deal of pain and suffering. All of you have stepped up to meet these growing needs, and I could not be more grateful. You are a collective force for good. We know that some communities have been hit harder than others. The pandemic magnified long-standing inequities and disparities for low-income communities and communities of color. They were more likely to be on the front lines as essential workers, risking infection, and less likely to have access of high quality healthcare in their neighborhoods. As a senator, I see it as my responsibility to make sure that our recovery plans address the inequities that exist elsewhere, from healthcare to economic opportunity to education. That's why it's so critical to me that our recovery efforts were and are designed to help struggling families, to help the people who are out of work through no fault of their own, and to address the root causes of these inequities. The American Rescue Plan extended and expanded access to programs like SNAP and Pandemic EBT. It increased WIC's cash value benefits to help families afford fresh fruits and vegetables. It provided resources to programs that older adults rely on, like Meals on Wheels. The ARP also included $3 billion for the health force, which is legislation that I worked on to create a nationwide public health workforce to help us bring healthcare and public healthcare jobs to underserved areas, and to make sure that constituents could get eyes and ears on the ground to extend the access of our healthcare system to them directly. More than 500 health force workers have already hit the ground running in New York City, and they are serving the needs of their communities and learning skills for future jobs in healthcare, hoping to be our future nurses, doctors, and EMTs. As we continue to plan for the future, we have to ask ourselves how we can build a society that supports families and communities so that they are not only they not only aren't left so vulnerable to the next crises, but also given the chance to thrive. I was focused on ensuring that the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act will help us address the failings of the past and the impacts that the Robert Moses era of highway construction had on communities of color. I'm very proud that key provisions of that bill, the Build Local, Hire Local Act, were included in the package. This would make it easier to hire local workers for transportation infrastructure projects. These are the kinds of family supporting jobs that will help us rebuild our roads and bridges, our communities, our economy, and ultimately the middle class and the US economy at the same time. But it's just as critical that we create new human infrastructure that will keep families connected to economic opportunities like affordable, accessible childcare, to caregiving, to paid family leave. We've seen millions of women, including many women of color, leave the workforce during the pandemic. Many because they didn't have paid time off or the supports they needed to care for children who were distance learning or family members who were sick. Their families and our communities can't recover if they continue to get left behind. So we need to take this kind of bold, big picture approach that lifts up communities and leaves all of us better prepared to weather the next crises that we will ultimately face and our nation will face. I know all of you will continue to fight the good fight in New York, and you can count on me as a partner in all of that work in Washington. And for now, I'm looking forward to hearing from you and taking your questions.
Thank you so much, Senator Gillibrand. It is wonderful to meet with you again and to hear about all of the great work that you're doing. And thank you as always for your commitment to the nonprofit sector. So I will now share an overview of pressing issues facing nonprofits and our federal priorities, and then move us into questions from nonprofit leaders. So to start out, you know, major pandemic federal relief programs like the Paycheck Protection Program and the Employee Retention Tax Credit were lifelines for so many nonprofits, and they've expired. But nonprofits have not fully recovered. More than 75% of nonprofits across the country report demand for services has increased over pre-pandemic levels. 45% report a decrease in their ability to meet those needs, and 26% have had to create a waiting list of more than a month. We also know that smaller Black, Indigenous, and other people of color-led nonprofits are under heightened stress. Nonprofits face a workforce shortage, as many other sectors across the country, and are struggling to pay living wages for our workers. 40% of nonprofits report staffing levels are down, and as of the end of 2021, nonprofits had only recovered 72% of the jobs from May 2020 levels. Living wages is one of the leading drivers of the workforce shortage, followed by an inability to find childcare. And we know our workforce is a majority women and people of color, and suppressed wages disproportionately falls on these communities. So our recommendations are to advance policies to address staffing shortages and provide living wages. We support requirements for government contracts to pay a living wage from all levels of government. We support retroactively restoring the Employee Retention Tax Credit and modifying the eligibility beyond the gross receipts test to include things like childcare and education subsidies as eligible expenses. Unlike our for-profit counterparts, tax-exempt nonprofits are not currently able to receive income tax relief for providing these employee benefits. We also support the Work Now Act, which would provide large-scale hiring grants for nonprofits. And also we support reforms to the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program to provide relief to our workforce. We further recommend Congress generate resources to meet the needs of relief and recovery. Nonprofits advocate for passage of the Universal Charitable Giving Act, which would extend and expand universal charitable deductions for individuals who do not itemize, reinstating the 100% adjusted gross income cap on individual donations, and the 25% tax cap on corporate donations, which also expired at the end of 2021 and reduced to 60% and 10% respectively. And finally, we advocate for full nonprofit inclusion in any further economic relief programs. So with that, thank you. And I will now introduce Ron Abad from Community Housing Innovations for our first question.
Good afternoon. Thanks, Chai. Good afternoon, Senator Gillibrand. Thank you for your outstanding leadership and service. Ron Abad, CEO of Community Housing Innovations. We're a not-for-profit that provides shelter, affordable housing, homeownership programs in Westchester, Long Island, Hudson Valley. COVID-19 has further proven the life-limiting and deadly impacts of racism in America. With a direct service workforce that is more than 60% women and 60% people of color, What actions will Congress take to meaningfully address living wages for the not-for-profit workforce in government contracts? I'll ask the question again if needed, or.
Sorry, I just had to unmute. So the cost of living and wages for the not-for-profit sector is really vital because cost of living has continued to go up all across New York State. With COVID, we've seen inflation rise for the cost of medicine, for fuel, for gas, for food, for pretty much everything. And so for a lot of people in the not-for-profit space, it becomes unaffordable to even live in New York. And so lots of things we can do to try to ameliorate those challenges. First of all, student debt, vitiating student debt for anyone who is doing public service. I have legislation to do exactly that. There's existing legislation that Senator Kane and I tried to fix because there's a lot of people who did go into not-for-profit service and they're supposed to be all their loans paid off after 10 years. It wasn't working for anybody, never got implemented under President Obama or since. So that got fixed and that should be in place for people to get student loans taken away. But I have other legislation that I want to vote on that would allow for every year you do public service, you get a free year of community college or state school. So that bill would make a huge difference to lowering costs and making affordability. Second issue is housing. Housing in New York State is so expensive, and we have a rise of homeless in our state, which is shocking and terrible, including homeless children. And so we're working on 5 or 6 different pieces of legislation right now to bring the cost of housing down. We have basically put provisions in the COVID relief packages to create more affordable housing, to help people who couldn't pay their mortgages or couldn't pay their rent. So we understand that affordable housing is a huge issue. And then in terms of pay, obviously New York State is ahead of the rest of the country with having a $15 minimum wage. That is not true for the rest of the country. And that obviously needs to be a floor. And we need to try to continue to raise wages so that they are truly living wages. And then there's other things like access to nutritious foods and how we use food stamps more productively, how we use pandemic EBT more productively, using the WIC program more productively to make that more affordable. And then last, making sure we have family-friendly policies that help everyone. So the basic human infrastructure of work, having affordable daycare, having universal pre-K, having a national paid leave plan, continuing to invest in the child tax credit, all those things matter. In the Build Back Better bill we're working on right now, it's focused on lowering costs. There's provisions to lower the cost of prescription drugs. There's provisions to lower the cost of childcare, and there's provisions to lower the cost of housing. So if we can get Senator Manchin back to the negotiating table on that very important set of legislation, maybe, just maybe, we can go even further on lowering people's costs. And then last, on supply chain and energy costs, those are macro problems that we're trying to work on a macro basis. President Biden has already tapped our strategic petroleum reserves. We're trying to push Middle Eastern countries to do their fair share. We're trying to hold the oil companies accountable for gouging because they're raising the rates of energy because they can, not because they need to. So there's a lot in play on trying to make affordability real for people who are the not-for-profit sector.
Appreciate it so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the question, Ron, and so much, Senator. I will now introduce Cara Matteliano from the Community Foundation for Greater Buffalo for our next question.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Senator, for joining us and for your leadership over the years. You've mentioned childcare a number of times, and it really does impact the nonprofit sector, maybe more than other sectors, though I think everyone is feeling the pain there. And as you mentioned childcare, I was wondering if you could give us a sense of what you think is going to be able to pass in terms of supporting increased childcare. It has been a strength of yours over the years. And just wondering what you think is going to pass in terms of childcare, universal pre-K, child tax credit, those things.
So it's hard to say. These are programs that Senator Manchin isn't against, but he's not really for. So getting him to yes is going to be a delicate negotiation. Senator Schumer's in charge of that. And I've talked to Senator Schumer many times about the importance of affordable daycare, universal pre-K, and a national paid leave plan. I've met with Senator Manchin 4 times on paid leave, and he likes paid leave, and he likes it framed as an earned benefit, and he likes the universality of it. So surprisingly, he loves the way I drafted the Family Act, but he believes that this can be bipartisan. That is not true. Maybe we get 1 Republican, but not 10. So I'm going to start holding meetings with the Republican senators to start negotiating what kind of paid leave they would do. And I'm going to invite Senator Manchin to come to that so he could hear with his own ears that they have no interest in a universal program that is both universal and an earned benefit. They like tax credits, they like incentives, but again, that's up to the governor, it's up to the business, and you're never going to get to universal coverage. So it's going to take time. I don't think it's going to be done quickly. If anything gets done in the Build Back Better, it's probably going to be some affordability for childcare. There'll be some kind of investment for childcare or for universal pre-K. Manchin does not like the child tax credit, so I do not think that's going to be part of it at all. So we'll have to get that in another way. But the good news is the Democrats that are in charge support these things aggressively, and we just don't have a big enough majority. If we can win a bigger majority in the Senate, which is possible, there's 5 open seats, and any one of them could go our way. And we have 4 tough seats to hold and defend, all of whom has great candidates in those seats. I feel like we can hold the Senate. So we might have a second bite of the apple after the election if we can't get enough meaningful stuff done before. But I'm going to push as hard as I can, and I have a very long-term plan for how we get our dear friend Senator Manchin to yes on paid leave.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator. And Cara, for the question, I will now introduce Maria Lizardo from the Northern Manhattan Improvement Corporation for our final question.
Thank you, Senator, for joining us today and for your leadership in supporting nonprofits. Given the clear need nonprofits still have to fully staff up and support our communities, will Congress advance additional economic relief legislation?
Will Congress advance what? Say that again.
Additional economic relief legislation.
Well, that's a debate. So Democrats definitely want another COVID relief package, and the Republicans definitely don't. And so I think any relief that we get done between now and the end of the year will be in whatever our revised version of Build Back Better is, to be perfectly honest. We're hoping to lower drug costs as the main push in that bill, which would go a long way to helping everybody. But getting more money to states directly to respond to COVID, I think the Republicans are just decided that COVID's over, and they don't want to pretend or even provide for the needs, because they just want to live in an alternate universe of the needs aren't there. The needs are extreme. As you know, our healthcare system needs to be rebuilt, replenished. That's why the health force is so important, to get a new generation of workers ready to take over those jobs in the next 10 years. We need to rebuild our education system because we saw huge gaps in terms of the digital divide, in terms of resources, in terms of which schools could stay open and which ones couldn't. And I've never seen a bigger need. I'm going to publish a framework for reimagining education in the next couple of weeks that really lays out a community school-based model about creating the urgency of of education being critical infrastructure and essential infrastructure. And with that, it earns federal resources that could help level the playing field for states that want this money and want this designation. So we have a lot of work to do. The needs are extreme. And I am very focused on getting resources into the not-for-profit sector so you guys could do the great on-the-ground work that you've done to keep families whole and able and protected during this very difficult time. So I'm going to work as hard as I can to get as much money into our state as I can. And I just want to thank you guys for being such leaders and recognizing that in moments like this, that the gap between the haves and have-nots is so severe that but for the not-for-profit world, for its dedication to helping people who need help, a lot of people would have suffered even more. So my gratitude and my unbelievable support for what you do has never been stronger. I have to say, the work that was done in the not-for-profit sector over the last 2.5 years was nothing short of inspiring. And so I just want to thank you for never giving up and never giving in and just going the extra mile for the people who need you the most.
Thank you so much, Senator. That really means so much to everybody who is attending this town hall, and those who will see it to know that we are just so fortunate to have you as a champion in the Senate. And it's been wonderful to be able to hear about all of your great work in such a level of depth in actually a pretty brief amount of time. So I think we are right at time. I know it's a very busy time in Congress and you have a busy schedule. So we are going to close out from here. Thank you to everybody who submitted questions. Please be assured that we have shared all of the questions that we received with the Senator's team. Thank you to Monroe and everybody else.
Shout out to Monroe and my entire constituent services team. Every bright light story comes from them. So every success that we ever have is from their hard work. So thank you for giving them a shout out. I'm very grateful to them too. And also to the extent there's any of the not-for-profits that are represented here that want to visit by me when I'm in the state, please let Monroe know and Monica Hansen, my new state director, know. Because I love coming to see your work directly on the ground. So please extend those invitations and we'll try to get there in the next few months.
That's amazing. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. God bless you all.
Thank you, everybody. That concludes our town hall. I hope everyone has a wonderful afternoon.
Thanks, Chai.